Thank you very much. Before I start talking about my research and the role social media plays in intra-agency communication, I thought I'd just give you a bit of a contextual background to some of my research interests. I tend to look into the rather under-researched area of how people who work in PR, so I'm not looking at wider companies, how they actually work together and, just as importantly, what they actually think about their work. And often this is interlaid with social media as well. So my research covers themes such as the commodification of self, emotional labour and gender and things like that. So my research aimed to try and find out what the role of social media was in internal communications, not in terms of the setting up of any sort of formal channels, which we've looked at already in this panel, but more how employees use the channels that exist already, which could include things like Facebook, Twitter, blogs, LinkedIn even, all those sort of things. So in terms of my methodology, I used a qualitative approach and interviewed practitioners at a junior level. I didn't really want the views of management. I wanted the views of the account managers, account execs within small and medium-sized PR agencies to find out what they think about social media at work and how they used it. Now, to arrive at a contextual framework, I did a lot of reading, which I see is actually backed up by what a lot of people here have said already. There's very little research out there, for instance, into internal communications within PR agencies. And often where there's been research on how organisations use technology for internal communications, sometimes it's actually quite dated by the time it's published. And so unless it's got a really strong theoretical basis, it can actually date quite quickly. And there are writers such as Maurice Turner, who said that a lot of the research in this area actually tends to look at how people use technology and rather than what it actually means to them in their way of work, which I think I agree with, having looked at quite a lot of research in this area. Now, many of you will be working or would have worked within public relations, consultancies, agencies. And, we all know that within PR agency life, there's a lot of internal competition, but also many agencies can't actually survive without high levels of communication and cooperation between people. And writers such as Clutterbuck have looked at this and looking at areas such as communication being a contract, and when there's that contract in place, it actually helps people move towards organisational success because the team has got a real clarity of purpose. And this is something that I found is almost accidentally what people are using social media for, but more of that in a minute. So I was very much looking at what role social media played in internal communications. So I'm going to look at some of my main findings before discussing very briefly, within the 10 minutes, really what it all means. Now, the first thing I found out that in terms of formal, what you might call top-down, two-way internal communications, the traditional tools still rule within public relations agencies. And I should actually add, this research was done end of last year, early this year, so we're looking at a very current framework. Because however exciting and dynamic a lot of agencies might be in terms of what they do for their clients, within their own structures, it tends to actually be quite traditional, with team meetings, intranet, emails, really the most popular ways of communications. And where there are things done which are quite new and quite exciting, like there's one big PR agency in London that, for instance, publishes all the previous day's press coverage on the internet the next day. There's very little opportunity for consultants to actually comment on anything that management does through these social media channels. But what was interesting was no one actually claimed to be overloaded by the internal communications that came from management. So what role does social media play in all this? Because it seems like in terms of formal internal communications, it's not really very widely used. Well, social media in terms of internal communications, and here we're looking at how people communicate across an organisation, and really I'm looking wider here than just consultants. I'm looking at, the finance people, the office junior, everyone who works within an agency. Social media is essentially what Smith and Mounter and others have called social glue. And there's a prize for the person who knows what music video that slide comes from. It's from the 70s, by the way. So what I found in my research was social media provided this real glue that actually made teams work together more effectively and helped teams do their jobs well, with certain caveats, which I'll come on to later. So the benefits of social media for employees was that it very much speeded up socialisation. For instance, people would almost automatically friend new people in their team on Facebook, and straight away would find out that they weren't just some faceless 25-year-old, but that they had a strong interest in, for instance, rock climbing and owned a dog called Philip or something like that. So it's actually speeded up socialisation. People got to know each other more quickly. Also, people could actually choose how much they looked at information. And so a lot of people using Twitter and Facebook to put requests out if they wanted to find a supplier, if they wanted to take a client out for dinner, all these sort of things that you need to find out very quickly in an agency. So rather than shouting at people across the office, just post something on Facebook, even at 10 o'clock at night, because a lot of these social media tools are asynchronous. People can use them when the time is best for them. And also, employees sort of were able to manage who and when they communicated with. Not quite, as I come on to in a bit, but they can ignore certain communications as well, which actually helps to limit the amount of time they spend on internal communications. There are some issues with employees using social media to communicate within the organisation. Organisational messages can't be easily controlled, but really, were it ever thus, people have always talked about the company, at the water cooler with their parents down the pub or whatever. And it also, sometimes very complex decisions about clients, about working practices can actually take place without knowledge of management, or possibly just through a Facebook discussion or through a posting on a company blog, because some companies did allow consultants to have their own blogs. But ultimately, social media was actually viewed quite positively by employers because it allowed the job to get done. And in that sense, it was actually quite widely accepted. I mean, the next stage of this project that I'm working on at the moment is actually to talk to employers and find out what they think in a bit more depth. But there were some really big issues. What we found is that employees were very much forced to modify their behaviour online and keep their true feelings hidden because they felt they had to be friends with everyone in the organisation, and frequently they had to be friends with management as well, although this very much depended on the size of the agency. So some of the issues included the politics of who to friend or follow, who you did, who you didn't. And there's a couple of quotes here from the people I interviewed. So essentially, people were using Facebook, using Twitter, but then wouldn't say anything which would put them in a bad light. They weren't using it as a release, as a channel to keep in touch with their friends. They were using it very much as a professional tool. So essentially, what the findings of the first part of this research project was that social media very much facilitates good dialogic communications across organisations, and it really helps to speed up and improve informal communications. But it can actually be really, really destructive. Paradoxically, this whole drive for transparency meant that people have to be friends with everyone, they have to put their social lives on the line, so they were keeping more and more elements of their life actually hidden. And as one consultant I spoke to said that, editing my life has become second nature. I'd never put anything, I'd never say I was hungover, I would never put that I didn't like something, I didn't believe in something. So that actually there's no release for people at work anymore. And the other part of this project I need to look at is some of the psychological issues involved in this. So essentially we have this situation, the minority research shows, that social media can really help an organisation work in terms of improving the communications across an agency, but it can be potentially destructive because employees actually have no release for their problems and emotions because everything they say about life is online. Thank you very much.